We're in Miscanthus grass, or elephant grass as it's also known. And it immediately feels very different to the willow. It's much, well, I'd say much taller. It's more extensive in terms of being these tall grasses. So it's quite a monoculture compared to the willow that we've just been kind of looking at. So what we're going to do now really is have a walk along and really just get a feel of what's around, what we hear, what we might see. And yeah, just get a feel of how it kind of compares to the willow that we've been looking at over the last couple of days or so. So it's really interesting actually. We're sort of half an hour into surveying around the Miscanthus fields. You can just maybe hear them swishing to my left hand side. But what's very interesting is that we've virtually seen or heard no birds. There's been a little ticking of one robin, despite the fact that there's quite nice hedgerows all around the outskirts here as well. What appears to be missing perhaps are some of the other items that you know make up a mosaic environment. There aren't any, or don't appear to be any, sort of big mature oak trees around here. Any of the larger trees that are here don't really have any hollows in and are sycamore. And actually in the distance beyond me, a lot of the farming around here is pastoral, quite intensive pastoral grazing farming. So it just feels like there's quite a number of different ingredients that make up a kind of mosaic farmland environment that are kind of missing here, and maybe that's why we're not seeing or hearing anything. The Miscanthus itself is obviously it's quite a dense crop, so there's very little foraging opportunity for birds. But I'm hoping that as the sun starts to go down and we get towards dusk, there might be perhaps one species or two species that might be congregating to come into roost. So it'll be interesting to see whether that happens or not. So this is really exciting now actually, because there's lots of different pied wagtails dropping in. So I'm doing a tally because while some have already gone into the grasses here to roost, there's more kind of dropping in. They're perching on the telegraph wires to start with and then heading the way in. Small flock of starlings flying around as well. Be interesting to see whether they go into the grasses. And meanwhile, there's also a goldcrest, our smallest bird in Britain, just squeaking in front of us down here. So it's getting really exciting now that we're getting into that dusky time. I'm just keeping a tally of these pied wagtails, and every so often another one drops in or a half a dozen pops in. And they're coming from lots of different directions, but they've got a very distinctive call. Keep hearing the sort of the call coming from above us really, and then the birds are dropping down. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 40, we're up to about over 40 birds so far. 3 pied wagtails are rebunting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, about 20 there. Oh, can hear some more coming from the right. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're over 100 now. We're definitely over 100 pied wagtails coming into roost, which is fantastic. A real hive of activity now. Look at this. Look, loads of them just flying around in front of us. Fabulous. Trying to be careful not to double count, of course. Lots of them on the wires in front of us. Lots just dropping straight down into the grasses. It's almost 4:30 now. There's been probably, I think, I need to do the tally, but close to 1,000 pied wagtails have been coming in to the grasses over here to sleep for the night. This is their roost. And, you know, this grassy habitat really has been very quiet during the daytime. There's been a bit more noise of woodland birds behind us there, dunnocks and wrens and things, blackbirds. But actually the real spectacle has been just so many pied wagtails coming into roost. What a way to finish the day. Good morning. Well, here we are the next day. It's been about -3 overnight. Everywhere's coated in a frost and it's very, very peaceful this morning. But there are birds around. Just heard a siskin go over then. There seems to be sort of pied wagtails occasionally coming out of the Miscanthus, just sort of here and there. I don't think we're going to see a big flock just rise out. And in the woodland, there's been quite a lot of activity with some dunnocks and blackbirds, some chaffinches. Lots of birds are coming out from roost at the moment. Big flocks of redwings, big flocks of wood pigeons going overhead where they've been roosting in nearby woodland. And the hedgerows, we can just hear the ticking of robins, for example. There was a squeak of a meadow pipit just now. I think once the sun comes up above the horizon, that might well increase the bird activity. So it'd be really interesting to see what we see in here. I think more on the outskirts of the Miscanthus, but we'll see what happens. So we've just had a bird in the Miscanthus. We've just had a reed bunting. Was able to pick up calling. It's just flown out and done a sort of circle round off, no doubt for food in the wider countryside now. Reed buntings, you'll often find them on farmland, particularly where you've got rivers, you've got grassier margins. You'll get them in reed beds as well. Just a single bird. Certainly last night we had one or two calling as well, but nice to get a bird that's actually just been in here, no doubt roosting, no doubt resting for the night, and has now headed off to feed for the day. Yeah, so we've just had a couple of gold crests, initially feeding along the hedgerow here, but one of them's actually just gone into the Miscanthus here, probably to look for maybe spiders and other little invertebrates that will be in here. So delighted to see that things are actually going into the Miscanthus and not just simply using the hedge line along the edge of it. So that was really good.
So Ed, we've been in the willow and the Miscanthus the last couple of days, had a wonderful time, really enjoyed it. What are your impressions?
Yes, well, obviously yesterday we were looking at the willow and I was delighted to see just how much variety was there in the willow. It was a real mosaic environment and the willow was very much kind of complementing what else was there. And there was lots of different bird life kind of using the edges of the willow.
Mm-hmm.
We've been looking at the Miscanthus in a different sort of environment, really. It's a much more pastoral kind of grazing environment here. We're about 180 metres above sea level, just on the edge of Exmoor. So it is a different environment. And the Miscanthus certainly hasn't kind of lived up to the expectation where I thought I was going to see a lot more bird life kind of using it, really. But I think actually getting in amongst it, realising, you know, it is this kind of non-native grass growing here, obviously on a big scale. What has been positive though is the fact that actually coming out this morning, just seeing some of the bird life that's using the hedgerows and popping in and out of the Miscanthus. So I'm optimistic to kind of see whether the Miscanthus actually is more used by bird life in the springtime. I'm conscious though that because it's non-native, it hasn't necessarily got insects feeding on it in the way that native grasses would. However, it does have lots of damp patches, lots of cover, lots of rotting vegetation beneath it, which may well be attractive to thrushes and blackbirds. So we shall see. What I have been impressed with though is the fact that both habitats are providing important roosting and resting habitat for birds. So in the willow we had the linnets coming in, and here we've had the pied wagtails. So in that respect, both habitats are providing an important winter roosting environment, which hopefully is improving and increasing the survival of both those species.
And as a forward look, what do you expect to see when we revisit in the spring?
Yes, well, certainly from the willow, I expect that to be used by lots of different species, particularly warblers, maybe chiffchaff, black-capped willow warbler, birds that are going to be feeding their chicks on insects. I think are going to be using willow. It's second to oak in terms of its usefulness for kind of wildlife, in terms of how much insect life it supports. With this Miscanthus, I think the hedgerows here are certainly going to be productive. They look like they are old embankments, old hedgerows. They've been here a long time. I think they're going to be very productive for bird life. And I think then, whether it's incidental or not, I think that birds will then kind of spill into the Miscanthus. So I think the Miscanthus will probably be used more by perhaps ground-dwelling birds, maybe robins, dunnocks, wrens, blackbirds, thrushes, those sorts of things. I have a feeling it won't be used so much by warblers in the way that willow will, just because simply it doesn't appear to be being eaten by anything. You look at the leaves and they all seem very perfect. They don't seem to have been eaten by caterpillars. So I'm not convinced that there's kind of the insect life in here that those birds would want. So, but we shall see when it comes to the spring, and who knows, we might be surprised by what's in there and what's using it.
So watch this space. We'll be back here spring 2024, and then we'll report back.